We're not sure if what we see is a dream or a memory, a war. Countless battle below Dalamud, the lesser moon, as it descends beneath the clouds. Suddenly, it cracks, then explodes, birthing a colossal dragon. Then there was just flame, ash, and finally, darkness. And in that darkness, a woman's voice beckons. Hear, feel, think. We follow the voice to a soothing light, but a cloud of darkness appears and blocks our path. A masked man emerges from the smoke, but he doesn't attack. He stands and waits as the light anoints us with its power. Finally ready, the battle begins. Or at least that's what we think we dreamt of last night. It's all kind of hazy now. Maybe we had a little too much to drink. Maybe it's Maybelline. Or perhaps it's because we're getting closer to Ul'dah. I'm Late to the Gamer, this is Console and Control Gaming, and that scantily clad Ura is Vehement Morningwood, our hero that never pulls out of a tight spot. I play games, watch all the cutscenes, read all the text, and explain the stories back to you dramatically so you don't have to. Today, if you let me, I'll be telling you the story of Final Fantasy XIV's Patch 2.0, A Realm Reborn. And without further ado, we wake up in the back of a carriage flanked by a talkative trader and sour-faced Elysian twins. Upon crossing into the region of Thanalin, we immediately partake in the local customs. The police shake us down for money, and we get caught in a shootout. After a long ride, we finally arrive at the city of Ul'dah with just enough cloth to cover our nipples and not nearly enough to cover our ass. Momodi, the leader of the Adventurers Guild, welcomes us to the city and helps us get our bearings. After learning that we're new to Eorzea, she tells us of the calamity that occurred here 5 years ago. The lesser moon cracked like an egg and released an ungodly fiend that destroyed everything in sight. The nations of Eorzea have been rebuilding ever since, but no one remembers how the night ended. It just did. She tells us that depending on who we talk to, the memory will be different, but they'll share the same feeling. Someone died saving the world that night. Or maybe not. No one's really sure because their faces are a blur and the voices are mute in their memories, so they're referred to honorably as the Warriors of Light. As suggested, finding work is difficult. Refugees from destroyed or military-occupied cities live outside the gates of Ul'dah and make for competition in the job market. We find ourselves doing menial tasks within the city until Momodi has a job for us. On behalf of the station master, Papa Shan, we deliver food to the Sultan swarm patrolling the outskirts of the city. When we return, he discloses that they're searching for the daughter of a noblewoman. South of Ul'dah, we find a Lalafell girl praying to the Sultan tree. Her escort arrives shortly after, but is suddenly overtaken by an eerie sensation. There's interference in the ether, he says. A winged demon attacks and we team up with the escort to kill it. It explodes into smoke and a crystal falls to the ground in its place. We're drawn to it, and it to us. In an instant, we're in a dark place. A sigil illuminates beneath our feet and the crystal materializes into a slot on the seal. The light in the crystal then springs forth and rejoins the soothing light above us in the sky. We hear the voice again. Hear, feel, think. In an instant, the light in the sky becomes the source of destruction as fire rains from the heavens. We're quickly snatched back to safety and the voice calls us Crystal Bearer. She is Hydaelyn, all made one, and she warns that the balance has tipped to the favor of darkness, and if the light dims, the world will end. She instructs us to continue down our path, and our deeds will lead us to the crystals of light and the power to expel the darkness. We regain consciousness to hear Lady Lilira and her escort call the monster of void scent. The white-haired man thinks we passed out due to overconsumption of ether, but we explain that we got close to the crystal. This sparks an idea in his head, and he quickly departs, leaving us with this charge. We escort Lady Lilira to Papa Shan, but we don't get much of a reward, only the knowledge of the escort's name, Thancred, a scholar that investigates oddities in ether. The effects of the calamity become more apparent as we interact with the people of Thanalin. While the bustling metropolis prides itself on self-sufficiency, in reality, it's fueled on desperation and dollars. Loan sharks take advantage of the destitute within the walls, and refugees cling to the scraps left of the homes they lost. All the while, an aggressive beast tribe, the Amalja, raids Ul'dah caravans and attacks points of interest. But Ul'dah is a plutocracy, and wealth brings the power to change the law. Wyston, a refugee, aspires to make a fortune and bring equity to Ul'dah. He pays men to locate a mining vein so he can purchase the rights and start a company. But the men are brass blades and work for Lord Lolorito, a member of the syndicate that governs Ul'dah and someone that prefers the status quo. We save Wyston before he's killed in an ambush, but as we ready ourselves to fight the brass blades, we hear a chant in a language we don't recognize. The ground trembles and stones converge to create a clay golem. The mercenaries are petrified at the sight, but we're bolder and reduce it to rubble as the summoner, a masked man in black, observes. Thancred shows up again, and we have a vision of his past. More than 5 years ago, as he prepares to show two women where the magic happens, he overhears merchants discussing their stolen shipment of crystals. Thancred believes that the beast tribe intends to summon a primal in response to Dalamud. Later, in the market, he links the rising food prices and poor harvest to the moon's descent. As the ether flow of the planet weakens, Dalamud descends. Summoning a primal requires a large amount of ether and only exacerbates the problem. Finally, one evening, he uses a piece of Charlian technology to see the ether flow in Ulda. A recent disturbance leads him to reach out to Papa Shan and inquire about the Sultan Tree. We wait to hear Thancred give an incident report to someone far away on a device in his ear. He reports that he lost the target and receives instructions to meet with the general. But before he leaves, he finally introduces himself and warns us to be careful of Lolorito. He also finds it interesting that we happen to be at the site of another ether disturbance and jokes that he should just follow us around. He catches himself by surprise with this sudden informality. For a moment, he just felt like he knew us from somewhere, but he shakes off the notion and departs. Wyston is forced to flee Ulda for his safety, but promises to keep our name out of his mess as thanks. Things quickly go back to normal for a while. We venture far from the city, taking jobs until we reach the northern edges of Thanolin. Then a criminal conspiracy leads us back to the city. We discover a gem smuggling operation involving a captain of the Brass Blades and a guild of thieves. We put an end to the scheme, but find a sealed note addressed to Sultan Sworn Owen. Unsure if more Brass Blades are compromised, we take the sealed message to Momodi for some guidance. She reveals that the Sultana's crown was stolen, and Owen was the guard on duty that night. We decide to confront him with the letter to get a read on his reaction, looking for any indication that he's compromised. But the letter is actually a ransom note, and feeling the shame of failure, he concedes to the demands. We accompany Owen to the exchange, but instead of gold, the Sultan Sworn hands over a vial. The extortionist laughs in triumph, revealing that he tricked Owen into handing over Ulda's deadliest chemical weapon, the traitor's spurn. The powder was kept under lock and key because of its horrifying past. Centuries ago, after Ulda's sister city stole their primary source of water, Ulda invaded. They catapulted the chemical behind the city walls, and the dead began to rise and attack the living. With an exponentially growing army of ghouls inside, the citizens were barricaded within their own walls until the screaming finally stopped. Papa Shan and a contingency of Sultan Sworn come to our aid and recover the traitor's spurn, then pursue the crown. Now alone, the masked man reveals himself to us and summons another void scent. We eliminate the gargoyle, then attack the mage with assistance from an arriving Thancred. We strike him down and he laments having the wisdom of the paragons, yet being killed by a mortal. Thancred immediately recognizes the word paragon and identifies the man as a bringer of chaos, an Ascian. We ask if other Charlians know about Ascians, forgetting that we only know where he's from because of our vision. Thancred looks at us knowingly and says we're one of the gifted. That's why he's here now. He actually began tailing us after he realized what we were. A crystal now rests where the Ascian died, but it dissipates into black smoke before we can take it. With the crown returned, Sultana Nanamo Unamo of Ulda thanks us personally and implies that we've previously met. As a reward, she invites us to a banquet as her personal guest and dubs us Hero to Ulda, giving us an official title. The bountiful spread of exotic foods and expensive wine feels excessive considering the problems the city has. Roban Aldin, the Sultana's top advisor, pulls us to the side to level with us. The Sultanate fully understands the optics of living in opulence as children starve in the streets. They are appalled at the plight of their people and they want to make changes, but they're outvoted and thus overpowered by the monetarist members of the syndicate. Without warning, the crystal shines brilliantly in our pocket, drawing Roban's and our attention. We show him the crystal and his expression changes to that of both shock and relief, as if he's found someone he shares a dark secret with. He hurriedly asks if we have strange dreams or visions of a crystal. There were other people like us in Eorzea, also foreign-born, he says. When the Garlean Empire attacked, they helped unite the 3 grand companies. Regretfully, Roban can't remember the warriors of light he fought alongside, but we remind him of them. Pretty sure we just became best friends. He calls the crystals gifts from Heidelin and says they're only given to heroes and martyrs. As he begins to tell us about the Battle of Cardano, we have a vision. Dalamud breaks through the clouds as the leaders of the grand companies overlook the battle below. They order their remaining troops to withdraw, and they rally their personal guard to join Archon Louis Sois. From a distant mountain, 2 Ascians watch the chaos they've created. The one in the red mask declares victory as Bahamut bursts from the moon. Momodi wakes us up in a room in the quicksand. We passed out right in the middle of the banquet. She tells us to get up because General Roban wants to speak to us at the headquarters of the Immortal Flames. He wants to organize a memorial service in honor of the Battle of Carteneau with the other city-states. And because we're the closest he has to a warrior of light, he'd like us to carry his request to the other leaders as Lord Envoy. With our new access to airship travel, we take off for Limsa Lominsa by the sea. As we fly away, the Sultana hopes the other leaders sense the light inside of us just as she did when she met us under the Sultan tree. Meanwhile, far away in the Castrum Occident stronghold, soldiers of Garlemald salute their superiors. Their leader gives his own memorial, one of the Battle of Silver Lake, where their imperial juggernaut, the Agrius, was destroyed by the Elder Dragon Midgard Swarmer 15 years ago. And although the Great Worm fell, the Garleans were unable to claim victory. Overhead, a large machine is lowered into the base, as the general finishes his speech by telling his men that they are in Eorzea to save the world, and to do that, they must save Eorzea from itself. After the men are dismissed, Nero, an especially astute man, overhears a soldier doubt the cause and quickly deduces that he's a spy and disposes of him. In Limsa Lominsa, we meet Chief Admiral Merwib, leader of the city-state and its army, the Maelstrom. She tells us that years ago, when the Garleans planned to slam Dalamud into Eorzea, they didn't know the primal Bahamut was housed within it. They were also caught by surprise. In an instant, there was devastation and then a jump cut. The battle was over and the land was warped. Merwib accepts Roban's proposal and asks that we relay a message to Kane Senna. A wolf has been sniffing around the stables. We reply the llama is wearing a hat, then abruptly depart. In New Gridania, the leader of the Order of the Twin Adder tells us that 50 years ago, Garlemald was insignificant, but under First Emperor Solus Zoscalvis, they made the technological breakthrough, Magitech. With it, they annexed the neighboring countries on the northern continent of Isambard before moving on Eorzea. But he would be over 80 years old now, and Kane Senna believes a battle of secession destabilized Garlemald, leading to the current state of Cold War. But Merwib's message conveys that the Empire is preparing for another advance. If General Gaius van Belzar and the 14th Imperial Legion attack now, the city-states will fall. Kane Senna agrees with Roban's proposal because she understands the memorial will be a rallying cry for the three great cities to once again unite in defense of Eorzea. A tip for work in Limsa Lominsa brings us back to the city. Commodore Rayner of the Maelstrom needs suspicious activity investigated near Airport. An unknown ship has been sneaking in and out of the Satasha Sea Grot, but the Maelstrom are too busy holding off the Sahagan Beast tribe to spare any men. We find a secret door in the cave revealing the hideout of the Serpent Reavers within. We purge the pirates we encounter and chase Captain Madison to the docks. He accidentally enters the Sahagan spawning grounds and his protector kills the captain. But we're not off the hook. His blows send us reeling, but we fillet the fishman and report another job complete. As news of our successes spread, more work becomes available. We stop a doomsday cult in the Tamtara Deep Croft for the Gridanians, a real cloak and dagger mission. Then we take on the tall task of clearing the Copperbell mines of giants interfering with the mining operation in Thanolin. After clearing the mines, we try to report the Momodi, but a woman's scream grabs our attention. A merchant and his gang publicly accuse the refugee of stealing. They tell her they'll keep her theft quiet if he and his men get to ride the train. Yeah, so we beat the shit out of these guys. The woman's thanks sends us into a vision of her purchasing the allegedly stolen items. Proven wrong, the slimy merchant flees town. Thancred appears out of nowhere again and is pleasantly surprised by our selflessness. We literally just saved the damsel in distress. He's realized that we're the person he's been searching for. Thancred reveals that he knows about our visions because he knows other people like us, and if we join his collective, the Scions of the Seventh Dawn, he'll introduce us. He tells us if we're interested, Momodi can tell us where to find him. We report that we cleared the Copperbell mines and ask the guildmaster about the Scions. She warns that they are noble and trustworthy individuals, but their work is extremely dangerous. The Scions operate in secrecy, solving the problems of Eorzea. When we show her we're still interested, she sends us to the western edge of Thanolin, to the town of Vesper Bay, in search of the Waking Sands. We immediately notice that the town lacks a large aetheryte crystal for fast travel. Attuning our ether, or life force, to one of these crystals allows us to travel the life stream, the ethereal currents that flow throughout the world, and then identify the crystals we've previously attuned to. Once we attune to a crystal, we can teleport to it from any other crystal in the world. The lack of a crystal here serves as another level of security. In a building, we find Tataru, who immediately tries to kick us out until we tell her that Thancred invited us. Surprised, she sends us downstairs to the solar, where we find a diverse group of people flanking a blonde woman. Minfilia welcomes us and explains that the Scions are an apolitical group with the objective of preserving the future of Eorzea. Presently, their primary concern is eliminating the godlike beings known as primals. Many of the Scions have a special ability, like the visions we receive from time to time. It's called the Echo, and it manifests differently in each individual. While we can see and interact with memories, Minfilia is able to know a person's intentions. She wants us to join because these abilities are necessary to stop the primals. Although Minfilia should be able to know what brought us here, she's unable to read us. Relying only on faith, she gives us a secret code Scions use to identify each other in the field: wild roses. To sweeten the pot, she tells us that the Scions have benefits that make adventuring easier, such as the right to hire retainers to generate income through trade. We agree to join the collective, and Minfilia gives us a brief retelling of their history. The city of Sharlayan was the mecca of the study of magic and ether. So renowned, even the Garleans avoided direct conflict with them. But as the realm fell into chaos, most of the Sharlayans abandoned their city for the motherland. The people in this room are those who remained, the Archons. After the leader of the Archons died in the Battle of Cartano, more people with the Echo were recruited and the Scions of the Seventh Dawn was established. Ida and Papalimo survey the Twelveswood and Gridania. Thancred watches over Ulda, while Ishtola observes Limsa. The mysterious fellow in the corner, Urianje, presides over all affairs within the Waking Sands. The thus doth, his words make Minfilia lower her brow. And last but not least, Tataru handles the finances. Minfilia gives us our first assignment: investigate the hijacking of a shipment of crystals in an area where several people were recently abducted. Thancred believes this isn't a coincidence, and the Amalja intend to summon the primal Ifrit. We start our search in Camp Drybone in Thanolin, where our contact Isambard welcomes us, but everyone else is too scared to talk. He suggests asking the merchant Angus to be a mediator, but we find that he's the same merchant we beat up in Ulda. Since that won't work, Isambard believes that we can learn something useful from the clergy at the Church of St. Adama Landama, just a short walk away. We question Marcus as he tends to the grave sites outside of church, but he's kind of awkward and rude. Sister Orson apologizes for Marcus's behavior, but she doesn't have any useful information either. She does mention that Thancred recently visited and took issue with the gravekeeper as well. She explains that he suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder after his experiences during the calamity. We return to Drybone to find Thancred with some leads of his own. He surmises that the common folk will only tell their secrets to the church through the anonymity of confession. He suspects Sister Orson is involved, and he can't shake the feeling that he's met Marcus before. Tailing Sister Orson leads to us finding her surrounded by fiends as she tries to recover a missing memento for an orphan. Is spying on a nun a sin? Cause right now it really feels like it. As we followed the sister, Thancred found some beastmen nearby and tracked down their encampment. We sneak inside looking for clues and find a job posting meant to attract the poorest followers of the Order of Nalthal. We take the document to Sister Orson for answers, but she says all the biblical references are incorrect. It hits her. Someone is posing as a priest. We go undercover as common folk and draw out the fake priest and find that it's Ungust. He swears he only worked with the Amalja to protect the settlement he was born in. Skeptical, we wait until he finally admits that he was also paid. Thancred also accuses Ungust of leaking the patrol routes of the Immortal Flames, but he flatly denies it. We use the merchant to set up a sting operation in conjunction with the Immortal Flames, hoping to capture the beastmen responsible, but we're double-crossed by a traitor among the ranks. We're knocked out and wake up in the Amalja stronghold, Zanarok. The beastmen offer us all to the free: the flames, Ungust, the traitor, and the prisoners we came to rescue. The demon breathes fire on us, but it doesn't burn. Instead, the men around us become fanatically enthralled with the primal. We're immune to the effect, and Ifrit sees that we've already been claimed by Hydaelyn. The Ascians warned him that people like us must be eliminated, so he attacks, but we manage to slay the primal to the horror of the beastmen. In his place now rests another crystal that floats to our hands and sends us back to the sigil. The crystal takes its rightful place and the light rejoins the one in the sky. With the primal threat stopped, we free everyone and escape. Nero and Livia of the Imperial Army watch from above. Nero is frustrated because Ifrit was weaker than he expected. He's happy that he successfully coerced the beast tribe into summoning their god. He just didn't expect us to take it out so quickly. Livia, in tones that suggest an intimate familiarity with the general, threatens that if Nero fails, she'll be the one to mete out his punishment on Gaius's behalf. We return to the Waking Sands and debrief Minfilia, who informs us that similar situations are now occurring in Limsa Lominsa and Gridania. Because we're still green, she explains how primals work and why they're such a threat. Under normal circumstances, the primal's essence is spread out across the ethereal sea and the life stream. But when the world is chaotic, their followers send prayers. Those prayers become the beacon where the primal's essence concentrates. With enough ether sent through worship, the primal can obtain physical form. The beast tribe steal crystals because they quicken the process and amplify the beacon. But when the primal manifests, it must continuously consume ether to maintain its form. The stronger the worship, the stronger the primal, the more ether they need. The more ether they absorb, the stronger they become, the more ether they need. So they temper mortals, compelling them to endlessly provide the god ether through reverence. It's irreversible, and the only defense is the echo. Thancred breaks the ugly truth. Everyone that was tempered by Ifrit has been put to death. There was no other choice. Thancred and Minfilia believe Ifrit's summoning was too well orchestrated, suggesting outside influence, but the thought is interrupted. The three chief officers of the Grand Companies bust down the door to recruit us. They fervently pitch the benefits of joining their army. Minfilia suggests visiting each nation during the memorial service before picking one. She gives us a link pearl, a device that uses ether to speak over large distances, and tells us to give her a ring when we're done. The first memorial for the Battle of Cartano is in New Gridania. We run into the twins that rode with us on the carriage when we first arrived in Ulda. As Kane Senna rallies her people, the twins look annoyed. Alphino is awash with smug pride, and Alize appears to be filled with violent contempt. The boy explains that the Gridanians contend with two beast tribes, but prefer to use violence as a last resort. They're constantly forced to defend against the Ixal, but they have a peace treaty with the Sylph, for now. The forest that surrounds Gridania is known as the Twelveswood, or the Black Shroud. During the calamity, the forest took a lot of damage, weakening the guardian elementals of the Twelveswood. It will take centuries to restore the forest and restore the power to the elementals, so the Gridanians focus most of their efforts on reforestation. Meanwhile, they almost completely ignore the Ixal. We see the twins again in Ul'dah as Roban addresses his people. While Alphino applauds the Ul'dah's willingness to fight, he also derides them as capitalists that don't solve any problems. Their lack of a plan for the refugees after half a decade is a perfect example. And even though the Amalja summon Ifrit often, Ul'dah just throws bodies at the problem. Eventually the money will dry up, and they won't have any immortal flames to throw into the fire. Finally, in Limsa Lominsa, Merwin begins her address as the twins find us yet again in the crowd. Alphino likens the Lominsans to the beast tribes. They war with the Sahagin and the Kobolds while an imperial fortress sits in their backyard. Then the pirate clans fight amongst themselves. The Garleans just have to wait for Limsa Lominsa to destroy itself. As soon as the final memorial ends, Minfilia calls us to get back to the Waking Sands and pick a company so their representatives can get the hell out of her office. While we head to Vesper Bay, the twins go to the Adventurers Guild in Ul'dah. Alphino gloats that his plan is in full motion while Alize is apprehensive. She dismisses the memorials as glorified pep rallies that barely mention the battle or the Warriors of Light. Her brother suspects that this was the intention, and he thinks it's better this way. He believes Eorzea needs to move past the calamity in order to move forward. That pisses her off. She declares that her grandfather would never trust despots that rewrite history. Offended, she decides they should part ways and work independently. Alphino agrees and wishes his sister the best, self-assured that although their paths are different, they'll converge down the line. We begin working with the Grand Companies and are tasked with recovering an airship and its crew that was shot down near Garlean-occupied territory. The Tiny Bronco is the first airship created by Garland Ironworks since the calamity. The owner of the company vanished, so we must return it intact. Soldiers at the crash site realize that the airship uses Magitech and call Garland a traitor. We rush them and successfully take back the ship, also saving crew members Biggs and Wedge. Back at the Waking Sands, Minfilia reveals that the crewmen have joined the collective as Magitech engineers. We welcome them to the group and quickly get back to business. Minfilia explains that she conducted an investigation for the Order of the Twin Adders with help from a group called the Students of Baldessian. Ida and Papalimo give a synopsis. The threat of the Exile and Garuda looms over Gridania, and they would like to avoid a two-front war. While the Sylphs currently have a treaty with the Gridanians, they have summoned Ramu in the past. Kane Senna would like us to confirm that their relationship is still intact and their covenant still stands. Ida and Papalimo guide us to the Sylph home, Little Solace. We try to ingratiate ourselves with the tribe, but the gatekeeper won't even engage in conversation until we dance for him. Muxiel then asked us to clear the area of Imperials and bring a lost sylph home before revealing that the Elder had been missing the entire time. We report the situation to the Twin Adder and they send out search parties. The Woodwallers, a local task force, joins the effort, but we don't know what to do, so we go to a popular adventurers bar and ask around. The bartender Buscarin tells us he thinks he saw a sylph and offers to use his connections to create a dragnet. We help him with a few small tasks while his people do their thing, and then they snowball into a search for a friend and a bottle of hooch. When we return, Buscarin gives us a list of locations where sylphs were sighted, but we only find Imperial soldiers instead. The bartender is shocked to know that the Garleans are this deep inside of the forest because the Wallers built warning spires all over. The only way the Garleans could bypass them is by knowing where they are. Buscarin easily identifies the traitor and the Wallers, and we follow him until he meets with Imperials. By the time we clean up this mess, the Elder Sylph has been spotted running away to the Thousand Maws of Totorak. The red-masked Ascian meets us inside of the dungeon. He introduces himself as Lahabrea, the servant of the one true god. Hydaelyn speaks to us of the danger of this man. She calls the Ascians dark minions, and Lahabrea calls the Echo a threat to his cause. Hydaelyn's mantra changes. Feel the presence of evil. The Ascian looks forward to our death, and with it the destruction of the Crystal of Light. He uses this dark magic to force a bug to grow hundreds of times its size, and then sicks it on us before vanishing into a cloud of smoke. We kill the mutated Scorpion and free Sylph Elder Frixio. We immediately have a vision of Imperial troops encroaching on Little Solace in search of the Elder Sylph. Nero realizes that Ramuh does not wish to be summoned and is actively ignoring the pleas of the sylphs they've captured and tortured. With his aspirations tattered, Nero quotes Garland, his self-perceived intellectual rival. Back in Little Solace, Papalimo presents Frixio with a letter from Kane Senna begging the sylphs not to summon Ramuh. She reassures the Beast Tribe that they are considered allies and the Gridanians do not desire conflict. Frixio returns the sentiment. He explains that Ramuh was summoned against his wishes and was only done so to protect them from the Imperials. But many were tempered by the god. The Elder couldn't reverse the effect, and the tempered could not spread the affliction. At a stalemate, Frixio took the untouched to Little Solace to maintain peace. The tempered take on the Primal's personality traits, and fortunately, Ramuh is not callous or cruel. So long as his ancestral home is undisturbed, he will not resurrect, and thus his tempered are also passive until impinged upon. Frixio gives us the Crystal of Light used to summon Ramuh, and its light returns to the source. As we travel back to the Waking Sands, Alphino overconfidently claims that this chapter is closed, but Menphelia knows that this is only a Little Solace. She asks him about Alizé, but he's dismissive and hands her another Baldessian report. As we enter the Solar, he exits, and Menphelia tells us that Leviathan, Titan, and Garuda are still potentially in play. We've got too much ground to cover, and she wishes that he was still with us. Biggs and Wedge knowingly nod in agreement, but in the meantime, everyone is granted leave. Until we tell Menphelia about Lahabrea. She says it's abnormal for Ascians to reveal themselves, so they must feel invulnerable. Suddenly, Tataru screams end our conversation and we race to her aid, but it's just a sylph. The Elder sent Neuraxia to assist his new allies, the Scions. Menphelia asks the Grand Companies to keep an eye out for masked men in black robes, and we learn of a potential sighting near Highbridge. At the settlement, a merchant tells us that while on the walk, curiosity drew him to investigate smoke he saw rising from a cliff in an unusual location. He got closer and saw a masked man standing by the fire, and soon after, Kikern joined him. They began talking, but the merchant was out of earshot and doesn't have any more information. We go to a remote location and set a fire, attempting to lure the man or the beastman into a meeting. Instead, a soldier from an unfamiliar army attacks us. We take him out and find a ward of the destroyer on his body. We ask the merchant if he understands the markings, and he tells us it bears the mark of Ralger. He identifies the assailant as a member of the Corpse Brigade and suggests we continue our investigation at the Little Alamigo refugee camp. Their leader, Gundabald, refuses to speak to us and tells us we're not welcome. The Flame Commander on site explains that the refugees don't even trust the soldiers protecting them, but his men standing watch near an Amalja encampment to the south may have seen the man we're looking for. We chat up the men and find that one of the lookouts saw a suspected Ascian with some of the younger refugees. It's great that we have a lead, but there's no way any of the Alamegans will talk to us right now. The Flame Commander suggests they'll trust us if we can show Gundabald that we're a friend of a friend. We return to Menphelia for a solution, and she explains that the Garleans annexed Alamigo over 20 years ago, and the city-states have refused to grant them asylum for so long the refugees have entered a second generation. Many of them have never even stepped foot in their homeland, and then they're treated like pariahs everywhere else. This has made them rightfully resentful, distrustful, and exclusive. With a deeper understanding, we ask if we have any Alamigan contacts among the Scions, and a man directs us to Quarry Mill. His contact is his girlfriend, and this is really uncomfortable. Although thoroughly annoyed, she introduces us to Mefred, a captain of the Alamigan resistance. He's cordial, but is currently prioritizing a crisis. Galleon is gravely injured. Mefred asks us to get the healer, but she's pretentiously indifferent. She refuses to help the Alamegans because the elementals don't even like them. We volunteer to help Galleon by finding the ingredients needed to make a remedy. We take it to Buscarin to prepare, but when he sees the ingredients, he recognizes the Alamegan cocktail and gives us some from his reserves. Galleon takes the medicine, but sneaks out of the settlement, explaining in a note that he refuses to be a burden on his countrymen and wishes to die alone. We find him in a tunnel on the verge of death, and Mefred scalds the man, reminding Galleon that Alamegans don't abandon their brothers. With his companion safe, Mefred gives us a letter of introduction. Gundobald reads the letter and immediately becomes personable. He tells us that he's seen the masked men talking to the younger members of the resistance. He gives us his stamp of approval to question his people, and we find a map of Zonarak in a secluded part of the cave. The few resistance fighters that do speak to us allude of a plan involving the Beastmen, revenge, and a lot of crystals. Then we see Wilfred pray to Rauger and then leave Little Alamigo with a group of young fighters. Deducing that they intend to raid the Amalja crystals and summon Rauger, we take Gundobald and rush to stop them, but we're too late. It's a massacre. Wilfred is one of 3 survivors. He damns the masked man. He planted the idea in Wilfred's head. Summon Rauger and the Alamegans will have the strength to take back their homeland, and he failed. And unfortunately, the masked man hasn't been seen since. We debrief Menphelia, and she says this is right out of the Ascian playbook, coerce the summoning of a primal. Another suspected sighting of La Habrea sends us to the forest of Gridania, near Falgord Float. Coincidentally, there's also been a rash of murders in the vicinity. The witness thinks he saw a minion of Nodthal, the god of the underworld. It walked alongside a winged eyeball with fangs as a woman's corpse followed behind. All the victims were attractive women, and their faces were mutilated. Our own investigation disproves the belief that local fauna killed them. Besides, it wouldn't make much sense for an animal to be that selective or consistent. Another man claims to have also seen a flying eyeball at the same time, but a great distance apart, albeit the second witness did not see a masked man. Realizing there's more than one of these voids sent, we search the area of the second sighting and find yet another woman's corpse hidden among the bushes. As we examine the body, a floating eyeball tries to ambush us. We take the woman's remains to the Serpent outpost in town, and the commander inspects the body. He notes that all the victims wore a button with a family crest of a lily, this one included. He gives us the button and suggests we take it to Gridania to identify the family. The leader of the Lancers Guild recognizes the crest as one she saw a well-dressed man wearing in town. We find a man in a tailcoat sitting on a bench, and as soon as he spots the button, he questions how we obtained it. We tell him that we found it on a dead woman, and he immediately asks if her face was cut up. Before we can get the words out, he spills his guts. For over 50 years, Ursendel cared for the D'Artancors, but during the calamity, Lady Armadine was disfigured and went mad. After locking herself away, she suddenly began inviting strange guests to the mansion. With the help of these masked men, she began the rites of rejuvenation. At first, the rituals were mundane, but they gradually became horrific. He witnessed the lady restrain a handmaiden and mutilate the girl's face. Then, he was tasked to dispose of the body. Traumatized, he never returned. Inside Hawk Manor, a floating eye greets us, then hides behind a magical barrier upstairs. Succubi inhabit the corpses of the dead maids on the first floor, and the basement secretly houses a torture chamber. We lower the barrier, and the floating eye retreats to Lady Amadine's quarters. The Void Sense cries wake the Queen Succubus, and we free her from her possession with an axe to the heart. She fades into smoke, and we hear the strange language of the Ascians again, but we don't recognize the voices. 2 lesser Ascians express a bit of admiration of our ability to handle 3 crystals of light, but they're not here to fight, only to watch. Back in New Gridania, Ursendel is relieved to know Lady Amadine has been put to rest. Racked with the guilt of the countless deaths he could have prevented, he decides to turn himself into the authorities. We go back to the Waking Sands and give Menphelia a progress report. She feels that the Ascians are taunting us because logistically, we just don't have the manpower to be everywhere. Anywhere there's strife, there's an opportunity for the Ascians to cause another primal summoning. The Maelstrom reports that the Kobolds summon Titan and fear that an attack could happen at any moment. Unfortunately, we have very little information about the god. Menphelia recounts that years ago, Leviathan and Titan were summoned at the same time. Merwib hired mercenaries that defeated them, but the party disbanded after the calamity. That company of heroes are the only people that know how to enter Titan's lair and defeat the primal. Menphelia dispatches us to Limsa Lominsa with Y'shtola to track down the heroes. The Storm Commander tells us that a month ago, the Kobolds converged in the south at the Gomorro mines where they resurrected Titan. Y'shtola points out that there was a land treaty between Limsa Lominsa and the Beastmen, but the Lominsans violated the accord. Merwib takes full responsibility for their transgressions, but asks if the Scion should want her to fall upon her sword. Y'shtola apologizes for her tone and assures the Chief Admiral that we will defeat Titan. We're tipped off that one of the heroes currently works at Greyfleet Mills and find Trachtem, a boastful Rogadin, riding on the coattails of his past success. He's eager to teach us what he knows after we complete his work for the day. Then he begins to tell us about how he defeated old Titus. Oh, crap. We expose him as a fraud and he admits that the real captain of the company of heroes is in Costa del Sol. Y'shtola gets right down to business when we arrive. She locates the captain, explains who we are, tells him we're immune to being tempered, and we've wasted a day. Titan is already here, growing stronger by the minute. So she begs him to please skip to the end. Please tell us how the hell to get into Titan's lair. Wise Kate looks off into the distance before taking a deep breath, as if to create dramatic tension for the story he's about to tell. He recounts the good men he's lost and refuses to tell us because he does not want to see us die. Y'shtola dryly retorts that it's our duty. The captain says he needs to be assured that we're competent adventurers. You see, he runs security for Master Gigi Ruju's estate, and if we just... Y'shtola snaps at Wise Kate, but he won't back down. He has terms. Y'shtola rolls her eyes so hard she goes blind. No, not actually, but it looks like it hurts. She just can't deal with this level of stupid. Wise Kate laughs triumphantly, knowing he's won their sparring match. After proving we can handle a weapon, he explains that his boss is expecting 2 very important guests, and we need to acquire the exotic ingredients necessary to hold a lavish banquet. His mercenary friends will guide us along the way. We remind him, again, that Titan has already been summoned, but he says that this is just a test to see if we have the endurance to face the Lord of Crags. We meet Lanendel in Camp Tranquil, and he tells us that the first ingredient is the egg of a giant adamantoise. The Lancer was part of the company of heroes, and he misses the traveling and the killing and also the drinking, gambling, and whoring. And he reminds us that we don't have to fight Titan in an attempt to scare us away. But after a long sigh, an eye roll, and an about face, we bring the egg back to Lanendel. In Forgotten Springs, we introduce ourselves to Uwadnan, and he completely ignores us, so we just have to keep on standing there until he finally pays us any attention. He wants us to prove our worth before telling us what the second ingredient is. He hands us a worn spear and tells us to defeat a renowned Amalja warrior and bring back his necklace. We notice unusual markings on the spear and leave it outside the Beastman's encampment. The warrior leaves the camp to retrieve it, and we ambush him. Nun takes the necklace and congratulates us on our victory. The spear belonged to the warrior's brother, and he knew that the very sight of it would draw the Amalja out. For our troubles, he tells us to procure some Welwick worm meat, so we use its favorite food as bait and slay it. Finished with our task, we return to Wise Kate, but he's got some bad news. The company quartermaster was supposed to bring the final ingredient, but there is a problem at their settlement. So we meet Brayflock's Altalks in Raincatcher Valley, west of Costa del Sol. She says a large winged beast chased all the goblins from their homes in the Longstop, and she can't get to the food. We enter the settlement and immediately see a dragon? Now they want us to slay a freaking dragon. Oh my god. Okay, so we clear out the drakes while protecting the goblins, then kill Ayatar in a cave past the Longstop. With order restored, Brayflocks gives us the final ingredient, rancid goblin cheese. The captain can smell the success wafting off of us when we return to the beach. He thanks us for all our hard work preparing the banquet. His boss will be extremely happy with the results, but it would be perfect if we could just get an aperitif. Apparently that's an alcoholic beverage that stimulates the appetite before dinner, but we're not worldly enough to know that without a dictionary, and now we're all out of fucks to give. He tells us to relax. We barely have anything to do. We just need to visit Wineport and find his man Shamani Lamani. He'll take the order slip and handle the rest. Wise Cake can see the skepticism on our face and assures us that if we think that this is just a test of our patience, it's not. He really does need it. Shamani is scarily observant. With a glance, he deduces that we're an adventurer, and with a sniff of the order slip, he picks up traces of beach and hints of goblin cheese, concluding that the order is from the captain. Unfortunately, he doesn't have anything of sufficient quality, but if we can find the rarest crossbreed of grapes, Wise Cake's a goddamn liar. After hours of speaking to growers, studying leaves, talking to connoisseurs, tracking down old acquaintances, and digging in dirt, we finally find the elusive Bacchus vine cutting. Able to once again reproduce this extremely rare grape, we alert a wine connoisseur who gives us a vintage bottle of Bacchus wine as thanks for our monumental discovery. We give Wise Cake the wine and stare menacingly into his eyes, waiting for another request. But we're done. Y'shtola consoles us. She can't imagine the amount of crap we just went through and applauds our patience. Suddenly, Master Gigi Ruju leaps into the air and lands on his knees, begging for forgiveness. He never would have let Wise Cake send us on those errands if he knew it was us from the beginning. Wise Cake's laugh draws our attention. He's flanked by Lanendale, Nun, Brayflox, and Shamani. The company of heroes explains that they made a pact to test anyone who follows in their footsteps by their deeds and not by their reputation. They feel it's their responsibility to protect the unready glory seekers from certain death. But we've passed every test and we have their complete support. They dub us Titan's Bane, and with Y'shtola's approval, we party. After the feast, she reminds us that we still need to know how to get into Titan's lair right now. Wise Cake sends us to his guide at Bronze Lake. Riol explains that the Kobold's home is a massive labyrinth in the Ogomoro mines. When the company noticed the beastmen traverse the tunnels effortlessly, they surmised that they have their own Ethernet. The company simply teleported into Titan's lair. This goes against everything we know. Without having previously attuned to a crystal, it should be impossible to properly identify its beacon while in the life stream. But Riol recalls that a Charlian mage located a beacon inside the mines and ported them inside. Y'shtola thinks on it and thinks she's figured it out. Riol takes us to the secret unamplified aetherite located above the mines. Y'shtola channels her ether to stabilize the crystal, then serves as a bridge to a beacon within the stronghold. We go on ahead while she stabilizes the connection. Inside Titan's lair, the kobolds curse us and Limsa Lominsa. They tell us that they resurrected the Primal because the Lominsans broke their oath by stealing their land, just as Y'shtola thought. They beg Titan to protect them, and the god obliges, but his fate is the same as his predecessors. He dies, and we take his crystal of light. Defenseless, the leader of the kobolds remind us that they did not break the covenant. They only acted in defense. They didn't even attack. They really want peace, but swear this will continue forever unless the Lominsans stop stealing their land. Nero observes the scene alongside Ratatan. Titan's power output was in the range that Nero wants, and he believes that it's time to proceed to the next phase. But Ratatan is apprehensive because they still don't know the full capabilities of their new weapon. La Habrea appears before the Imperials, and Nero asks him to confirm the weapon's strength. The Ascian replies that it could single-handedly subjugate all of Eorzea. Still, something just doesn't feel right, and Ratatan wants no part of it. The Garleans leave just as Y'shtola teleports into the mines not far from them. La Habrea watches us from a distance, rooting for us to finish collecting the crystals, so he realizes he's been spotted by Y'shtola and he vanishes. She notes that the Ascian used an advanced teleportation spell that she's not familiar with, but she did catch him conspiring with the Garleans. She tells us to wait for her at Camp Bronze while she investigates something in the mines. But when she finally arrives at camp, she doesn't tell us what she was looking into. She just asks us to debrief the Maelstrom in person, as per protocol. After speaking with the captain and Limsa Lominsa, Menphalia tells us to come home for a hero's welcome. Fortunately, the fastest way there is by boat, so we ride the ferry to Vesper Bay. As we leave the dock, we're greeted to a wall of people standing outside the Waking Sands, all having heard horrible screams coming from inside. We go downstairs to find dead scions everywhere, executed, butchered, and maimed in death. Neuraxia clings to life. She reaches out to us, and the echo shows us that right after speaking with Minfilia, Livia led Imperials into the waking sands. Minfilia barricades the solar as the Imperials kill Scions on the other side. Tataru hides behind some boxes, but we don't see what happens to her. Minfilia tells Neuraxia to stay hidden and deliver a message to us. The Garleans breach the door, and Minfilia surrenders on the condition that the wounded are spared. Livia demands Minfilia hand us over to the Imperial Legion, but the Scion doubles down on her demands, revealing that we are not there. She asks how the Imperials discovered her location, but the Garlean just points a gun in Minfilia's face. Neuraxia flies out of hiding to shield Minfilia, only to be dealt a fatal blow. Livia denies the request, and her soldiers begin killing the wounded and mutilating their corpses. Minfilia begs her to stop, and Livia thinks on it for a moment before deciding that Minfilia will suffice. They only need the Scions with the Echo. Neuraxia uses her last words to tell us that Minfilia wants us to go to a church in Thanalin for sanctuary. We go back to the church of Saint Adama Landama and tell the priest the wild roses are dead and we know not what to do. He understands and gives us asylum. He asks Marcus to attend to us, and the gravekeeper tries to be personable this time around. He finds a Garlean watch on a body he's preparing and is compelled to tinker with it. We give him the tools he needs, and he surprises himself by repairing the device, although he's never seen one before. Later, Sister Elined tells us that our fallen comrades are being prepared for transport to the church, so we go back to the Waking Sands to assist. From there, we return Neuraxia's remains to her people, and the sylphs weep for their friend. Phrixio thanks us for returning her, and Camuxio promises that when we face the Garleans, the sylphs will be there. By the time we return to the church, the Scions of the Seventh Dawn have been buried. Before we can digest what's happened in the last few days, Marcus asks for our help again. He says he feels eyes watching him from the graveyard. We humor him and find out that he's right. We kill an Imperial spy and alert Father Iliud. He sends us to get the immortal flames, but the doors to the church suddenly open. Alphino walks in. He's here in search of a legend because he intends to revive the Scions. He looks at Marcus and calls him Master Sid Garland, the world's greatest engineer. Hearing the name makes Marcus lightheaded and he falls to his knees in confusion. Father Iliud leaves the room and returns with everything he found along with Marcus 5 years ago. He tells Marcus it's time to help the people who really need him. Seeing him visibly confused, Alphino says the Scions of the Seventh Dawn are here to stand against the Primals and the Imperials. Most of Eorzea already thinks the Scions are dead. The city-states abandoned them and took them for granted, and now they mourn the loss and lose hope. Although his words carry contempt, he truly intends to bring that hope back to Eorzea, and he wants to do it with a grand act. The Exile have summoned Garuda, the most violent of the Primals, and even worse, this incarnation surpasses both Titan and Ifrit. He wants to show the beast tribes that even their mightiest gods can be slain. But we need an airship to bypass the shield of wind that protects it. Fortunately, Marcus learns, at that very moment, that he owns one. The Enterprise was last seen flying over Gardania before the Calamity. Marcus changes out of his robes and into Sid's clothes. Although he still doesn't remember his past, he's ready to help us change the future. The tale about the final flight of the Enterprise gives us enough clues to track the ship's path northeast from Thanalin, through the Black Shroud, and into the northern mountains. A Serpent commander suggests we may find records of the airship at the Observatorium in Korthus, but he warns that the region is controlled by the isolationist Ishgardians of the Holy See. During the Calamity, they retreated behind their walls and completely ignored it. The Observatorium towers over Camp Dragonhead. When we enter the settlement, the Elysian Knights immediately tell us to piss off. But we know how this works. We loiter around until we make ourselves useful. And fortunately, a member of a high house realizes that one of his knights hasn't returned from patrol. We search for them and stop a hooded lancer from killing the knight. But before he leaves and returns to camp, he calls the attacker a dragging-loving heretic. As a reward, we're allowed to ask if we can check the records. We're immediately denied. They have no interest in what goes on in the south and liken our war to a land spat, while they're engaged in a holy war. Inquisitor Guillaume approaches and the astrologians abruptly bow to him. He thanks us for assisting House Durandare, but even with his approval, we still can't see the records. Josie says she knows how we can get the records. We just have to do her a favor. Out in Ixal territory, we're confirmed that Josie's colleague is safe. We find him unable to sneak back out of camp, so we clear a path for him. But he's ungrateful and leaves without us because he didn't want to be seen with an unbeliever. Back in the Observatorium, Josie explains that the High Houses are honor-bound to repay the kindness of a foreigner if they do 2 favors for the house. By helping her, we've now completed our 2nd favor for House Durandare. She suggests we petition Lord Porterlane for an official introduction to the other High spy houses. With their help, we should be able to get any information we need. Porter Lane agrees to introduce us to all 3 houses after we've done a third favor for House Durandare. He sends us to recover any remaining merchandise from the site of an ambush, and we return with a chest belonging to House Haleonard. The porter inspects it and discovers that it's been tampered with. Inside, he finds a draconian rosary that isn't on the manifest. Porter Lane postpones our introductions and alerts the Inquisitors, but his personal guard whispers to us. He swears House Haleonard is innocent, and he asks us to warn Lord Francel. We travel to Skyfire Locks and find the Lord in a relatively modest post. He thanks us for giving him forewarning, and after this singular favor to his house, he offers his assistance in return. Unfortunately, no one will be able to sway the astrologians in the observatorium, and his house is too undermanned to help with the search. He writes a letter introducing us to House Fortemps, believing they'll be better equipped to organize search parties. We return to Camp Dragonhead and find Lord Horshaphant in the command center. Before we present the letter, he's already polite and welcoming. After reading it, he prays for Francel's safety and prepares several letters to various representatives in Dragonhead asking them to be forthcoming with us. Unfortunately, that doesn't work either, and we return to Horshaphant empty-handed. But there's an emergency. To prove his innocence through bravery, Francel led a few knights into the Stone Vigil, an outpost overrun by Dravanians. We rush to the outpost and find Francel's party overwhelmed by dragons, so we pull them to safety. Back in Dragonhead, Horshaphant tells us that he found a witness of the Enterprise's final flight, but because they saw us colluding with heretics, they don't want to be associated with us. We have to prove Francel's innocence, and by association, ours. We decide to investigate the source of the rosaries and return to Skyfire Locks and question Francel's men. They explain that the only people that come in contact with the parcels are porters and inspectors. We return to Dragonhead and inspect a random shipment and find that every single chest for House Haleonard and only House Haleonard contain a rosary. The porter swears he has nothing to do with this and tells us a knight in Whitebrim front recently approved the inspection. We rush back to Horshaphant and tell him there's a heretic among the ranks. The commander tries to delay Francel's trial, but Inquisitor Guillaume rushes him to witch drop. Horshaphant tells us to take one of his knights to stall the proceedings without killing anyone. We hear Guillaume tell Lord Francel to jump off witch drop and give his life to Halone to prove his innocence or admit he's guilty and be put to the sword. Witch drop. We stall the proceedings, but the Inquisitor orders his men to attack us. Horshaphant rides into battle to even the odds. One of the Inquisitor's men drops a draconian rosary during the fray, and when we pick it up, a wyvern suddenly joins the fight. After knocking out his men and killing the Dravanian, Horshaphant reveals that the Inquisitor's own guard carried the rosary and used it to summon the wyvern. The Inquisitor has no choice but to dismiss the charges against Francel, and with our name vicariously cleared, the witness finally tells us the Enterprise landed in the Stone Vigil. Horshaphant informs us that House Durandare is in charge of liberating the Stone Vigil, so we need Lord Drillamont's permission to enter. Sid and Alphino join us in Whitebrim front, but Guillaume shows up and brands us heretics. He tells Drillamont that he suspects that we're colluding with the Dravanians, and the Lord immediately accepts the Inquisitor's word without question and bars us from entering the Stone Vigil. We stick around Whitebrim, hoping to change the Asgardians' opinion of us, but no matter what we do, Guillaume shows up to ostracize us. As soon as he opens his mouth, everyone becomes obedient. We thought Inquisitors were political officials, but they're actually religious appointments. They're decreed as arbiters of Halone's will, literal avatars for the hands of God. A knight on bed rest recounts when Guillaume carried him to safety on his first night in Whitebrim. He fell unconscious when he chased a suspicious figure and woke up in the Inquisitor's arms. Upon finishing the story, Alphino realizes that the details didn't make any sense. The knight implied that he chased someone coming from the direction of a gorge. So we follow the path down to the bottom and find the corpse of the real Inquisitor Guillaume buried in the snow. We take a bloody papal encyclical from the body and question the knight again, but his memory has been bad since then, so he tells us to ask Knight Prunella. We show her the encyclical, and she tells us what really happened that night. A winged Dravanian knocked out the knight, then hid in the shadows. Then, from the darkness, a man's voice threatened to kill her unless she obeys. The man revealed himself to be an Inquisitor, then instructed her to help him carry the unconscious knight. It wasn't long before the Inquisitor began sentencing people to death through unfair trials. She knew she couldn't expose him, or she'd be put to death as well. But one day she found his stash of rosaries and had an idea. She began sloppily tampering with the chest and inserting rosaries. She wanted to get caught. She needed someone to realize there was a conspiracy and unmask Guillaume. After showing Drillimont our evidence, he readies his men to take the imposter into custody. We confront the fake Inquisitor at Snowcloak as he attempts to sentence another innocent person to death. Drillimont calls the man a traitor, but the spy proudly declares that he hates the Asgardians. He hates the way that they walk, the way that they talk, he hates the way that they dress, he hates the way that the theocracy murders anyone that disagrees with their doctrine. The spy attacks Drillimont as wyverns descend on the battlefield. Suddenly, he transforms into a huge dragon and we surround him. We attack in unison until his glamour finally fades, returning him to normal. Drillimont sees that the spy is mortally wounded and asks for his last words. He says he only regrets that Drillimont is still alive. He doesn't even remember how many people he sentenced to death, and he doesn't care because their families will always remember. And knowing that brings him joy because that means he did what he set out to do: repay blood with blood. He succumbs to his wounds, and disgusted, Drillimont leaves his body for the animals. We waste no time finding the Enterprise behind a very large sleeping dragon. Alphino and Sid sneak onto the airship to see if it's still capable of flight while we keep watch, but Brea appears and warns us that Garuda will be our most difficult challenge, but he says he believes in us. Then he imbues the dragon with his dark energy, waking it, and then just leaves. We cut down the dragon and discover the 5th crystal of light. It takes its rightful place in the sigil, but Alphino's worried voice snaps us out of our stupor. He's never seen us have a vision before, and he's worried that the dragon injured us, mostly because he doesn't want to be inconvenienced with searching for a new champion. He's still just as charming as ever. The Enterprise isn't in great condition, but we managed to fly it to Gridania for repairs. In order for the ship to pass through Garuda's vortex of wind, Sid needs a corrupted crystal to alter the elemental aspect of the barrier as the ship makes contact. With the help of a few experts in the field and some heavy exploration, we pull a corrupted ice crystal from the entrails of a Spriggan named Giggity. With the repairs complete, we immediately take off for Korthus to face Garuda. As we fly back to the mountains, Sid has a familiar feeling, but struggles to remember. The echo takes us into Sid's memories. He stands on the Enterprise holding his goggles out in front of him, trying to remember when he first got them. We guide Sid back into the dark recesses of his memory and show him that he was a child prodigy and the son of a famous engineer. He followed in his father's footsteps until his father became obsessed with Dalamud. So much so, he abandoned his family. Filled with resentment, Sid turned to the Imperial Army, and General Gaius became his new father figure. But soon, he realized that Gaius was just as obsessive as his father, so he ran, away from the weapon making and into a new life where he could create technology that improves life for everyone. As he flew over Eorzea with Biggs and Wedge, he suddenly saw a light. He approached, and as he focused, he saw us. We hand him his goggles. Conscious again, Sid tells us that he has his memory back. We dive down into Garuda's Tempest and easily pass through the vortex. We land near the Eye of the Storm and find the Ixal worshipping Garuda, but they also have Cobalt and Amalja prisoners. We immediately attack the Primal, but she survives the onslaught. She does not disappear or release her crystal. The Ixal continuously restore her with prayer, and because we barely interacted with them, they've collected an enormous amount of crystals. Alphino and Sid try to incapacitate the Beastmen, but Garuda cuts off all their attempts. As a last-ditch effort, she tries to temper us, but the Echo pulls the crystal out of her, leaving the Primal injured and confused. Gaius' voice rings out in disgust. He ridicules Garuda for being too weak. Desperate, she tortures the prisoners and they summon their gods. She calls on Titan and Afrit to lend her their strength to take revenge. Outmatched, we retreat as Gaius deploys the Garlean's secret weapon. The enormous black machine dwarfs the Primals. It lifts Afrit by its head and kills the Primal instantly, then absorbs the demon's ether. Red highlights appear on the machine as it incorporates Afrit into its system. Titan and Garuda share similar fates, with the machine gaining a green and yellow hue and thin wings. Amused, Brea watches us flee as he rides into Eorzea on a Garlean warship. Alphino realizes that he's out of his depth. He didn't even know who Gaius was until Sid refers to him as the Black Wolf, and that's only because he read the alias in his grandfather's journals. Sid snaps at the boy's lack of knowledge. He asks what the hell he's been doing for the last 5 years. As a matter of fact, how could all the Scions not know about this weapon? We are royally screwed. But while the Garleans have their weapon in play, no beast tribe will summon their primal, so we at least have some time to regroup without any more surprises. We slip back into the waking sands and find Ida hiding in the solar. She's relieved to see us, and when Sid remembers her, she breaks down in tears. She only found out what happened when she came back and saw the bodies being removed from the building, so she came inside and cleaned. There was so much blood. She tells us that the church was able to confirm that Papalymo and Minfilia weren't among the buried, so Y'shtola went to meet a contact that may know where they are. Alphino realizes that everyone missing and not confirmed dead has the echo, but after today's events, we need a moment to recharge. Hydaelyn speaks to us in our sleep, and with all 6 crystals, we hear her clearly. La Habrea is the avatar of Shadow, and our time to face him approaches. Y'shtola bursts through the door, waking everyone. The captured scions are in the Castrum Sentry in Mordona. Y'shtola suggests we ask Lord Portalane to share his intelligence on the stronghold. His scouts confirm that Urianger, Papalymo, and Tataru are prisoners there. His men also spotted an Imperial warship that briefly landed in Korthus, then Garleans were seen pursuing Biggs and Wedge. But where is Thancred? At another Imperial fortress, the general and his captain supervise the engineers making their final preparations of the weapon. Nero leaves to personally instruct them, while Gaius elevates Ratatin to his second-in-command. He gives them Castrum Occidents and half of the Imperial troops. Livia, on the other hand, is ordered to meet the general in his quarters. We track down Biggs and Wedge in Korthus and take out their pursuers with the help of Ida and Y'shtola. Reunited, we regroup back in Monument Tower. When the engineers see Cid, they weep with joy, but their smiles fade as they recall how quickly the Guardians had them all at gunpoint. They were held in Castrum Sentry for weeks, then abruptly loaded onto an airship bound for Garlemald, but they managed to sabotage the ship, leading to their escape. Y'shtola explains that La Habrea brought the Garleans to the Wakened Sands with this advanced teleportation magic. It's untraceable because it doesn't alter the ether current. Now we just need to find out how they knew where we were. We fly to Mordona and land in Revenant's Toll, not far from the Imperial stronghold. We plan to sneak in, so we do some basic reconnaissance. An Alamegan man is especially happy to help us hurt the Garlean and teaches us of a gap in the Castrum security. We eavesdrop on the enemy from a drainage pipe and confirm that our friends are inside. Next, we acquire Imperial uniforms for our disguises and learn their salute. Finally, we set up a communications jammer and lure the soldiers into its range. Once inside, we trap a patrol unit and hijack a Magitech Reaper armor. Due to poor maintenance, we replace the Reaper's damaged Magitech core with a Mammoth Heart, a device that gives automatons sentience. With the final piece in place, we're ready to free the Scions. We go undercover with Biggs and Wedge, pretending to be an Imperial patrol returning to base. As we infiltrate Castrum Sentry, Alphino and Cid cause a distraction outside the main gate, while Ida and Y'shtola give them cover. Outside, everything is going according to plan, but inside, Livia tortures Minfilia. After weeks of failed interrogation, she's ready to try more inhumane methods of questioning. She orders the prisoners be transported to Castrum Meridianum. Coincidentally, we trick a superior into giving us the key to the hangar, and we open to see Minfilia, Tataru, Papalymo, and Urianger on the other side. There's no time to waste, so we take out the guards and make a break for the exit. The guards report our escape, and Livia tries to pursue, only to be cornered by Ida and Y'shtola. But backup arrives, so the Scions retreat. Livia begins to crack under the pressure as she's forced to report her failure to the general. We fight our way out the stronghold, but the Imperials force us towards the cliffs. Trapped between the cliff and a firing squad, Y'shtola rescues us with a perfectly timed barrier. Ida attacks the soldiers but is cornered with the rest of us. The Imperials inch closer as Wedge rides the Reaper out of the stronghold. He jumps out of the machine and joins us on the cliff as well. The armor goes berserk, causing a distraction, and we follow Cid's command to jump off the cliff. We land on the Enterprise and lift off as General Gaius watches. A beam of green energy nearly cuts the ship in half. The weapon has been deployed. Minfilia corrects us. The Ultima weapon. The Garleans excavated it from the ruins below Alamigo. It's an ancient Allegan machine made to kill primals. La Habrea appears next to the general. Alphino identifies him as an overlord based on a description of Ascian's robes in his grandfather's journal. La Habrea watches us gleefully before pulling back his cloak and revealing he's Thancred. Minfilia is distraught. Her echo didn't warn her. Alphino feels like a fool. He suggested Thancred investigate the Ascians. Everyone in Eorzea already thinks the Scions are dead, so there's no telling how the Alliance will react when they learn of the weapon. Fearing they'll feel forced to submit to the Garleans, we rush back to Aldad to show them that the Scions of the Seventh Dawn are back. The Sultana, Roban, Merwib, and Kane Senna discuss the ultimatum Gaius has given their city-states. Submit to Garlean rule and he will rid the realm of primals. Resist and he will turn the weapon against them as well. They can't contend with the Imperial army, let alone the ultimate weapon. They don't want to be subjugated, but they realize they've squandered their time. Their cities aren't prepared for war, and they got accustomed to dumping their problems on the Scions. And now that the Scions are gone, they're losing their hope. Alphino's voice breaks the solemnity as we bust into the room to reveal ourselves. Minfilia appeals to the general's common sense. The Garleans only know violence and suffering, and in so long as there is strife, mortals will summon primals. The only way to truly stop a primal threat is peace. She begs the Alliance to reject Gaius' ultimatum and stand with us. One by one, they regain their courage to fight. They toss their ultimatums into a fire and tell us to wait at the waking sands as they prepare their armies for the final push. We wait on the call with nervous anticipation. Minfilia takes the time to explain that Ascians are immortals without physical form, and since the beginning of time, they've used artifacts to possess people and instill chaos. Artifacts like crystals of darkness. It's possible to free Thancred from his possession by destroying the artifact he carries on his person. Alphino pulls out the world map to explain how we're going to manipulate the Imperial forces to breach Castra Meridianum, where the ultimate weapon is housed. In Phase 1, we'll assassinate Ratatan while he conducts an inspection at the Cape Westwind outpost. Without its leader, Castrum Occidens will be easy to take. We'll then block Castrum Marinum in the south, while surrounding Castrum Oriens in the north. Once Oriens is neutralized, the Alliance will move to create a blockade between Castrum Sentry and Meridianum as we enter Meridianum from the south. The Alliance will then create a distraction while we disable the Magitech cores protecting the Praetorium. Once the shields are down and the blockade is in place, the southern front will overwhelm Meridianum, giving us cover to enter the Praetorium and destroy the ultimate weapon. With the plan laid out and everyone's role assigned, we're ready to begin Operation Archon. Ratatan arrives in Cape Westwind exactly as expected. The Alliance soldiers rush to Cape and we make a beeline for the High Commander. He tells the guards to warn Occidens that the Alliance is coming, then he tries to reason with us. He swears the Empire will fix all of Eorzea's problems if we'd only join his side. He understands our doubt, and he uses himself as an example of true equity. He is not Garlean, but he controls half of the 14th Imperial Army because Gaius saw that he deserved to. He was measured by worth and not by birth, and he believes that we would be too. But his words don't reach us, so he attacks. We injure the commander, and his guard provide him with a moment to get back to his feet. He becomes empowered by his rage, but we deliver a fatal blow. But he still lives. Ratatan tethers us and pulls us back to him as he sets the ground ablaze. He plans to take us out with himself. We strike each other mercilessly as we burn in the fire, but his flame burns too bright for too long, and with his last breath, it is extinguished. As we ready ourselves for the next phase, La Habrea is high from Duper's delight as he watches us play right into his hands. In Meridianum, General Gaius receives word of Ratatan's death as well as simultaneous advances on Occidens and Marinum. Allied communications confirm the beginning of the next phase as the Alliance currently moves on Oriens. At the southern staging point, we motivate Roban and his troops for the turning point of this battle. These men will be our lifeline, sacrificing themselves to allow us to play our role. We receive word that Oriens is surrounded, so we get in position at the southern wall of Castra Meridianum. Alphino and Minfilia flank Roban as he updates the troops. The forces at Oriens are now moving south to cut off Meridianum from Castrum Sentry in the north. Minfilia unifies the Alliance. She tells them that there are so many barriers that divide us: race, language, religion, and they've all served as excuses to keep us isolated. And while those barriers have been broken, they're being transcended right now as we fight side by side in defense of our home. Alphino, on the other hand, speaks to the Alliance about us. He speaks of how our exploits are immortalized, but reminds them that we are only one person. We've made sacrifices and endured hardships for the betterment of Eorzea that we've never complained about, and they'll never know. But now it's time for Eorzea to give back. Roban tells everyone to raise hell inside the walls because their actions will protect us and lead us to victory. The Alliance attacks the main gate as we push past the other defenses. Sid asks us to create a bit of our own chaos while he locates the fill generators we need to disable. After commandeering another Reaper armor, Sid creates a path to our goal. We defend him as he overloads the Reaper and fires a concentrated blast to destroy the field generator. The shield over the Praetorium drops, but Livia blocks the entrance. She's filled with resentment towards us, a regular adventurer that everyone praises. We wreak havoc and take his attention away from her, but she refuses to let this go any further. She is as possessive of General Gaius as he is obsessed with dominating Eorzea. In an effort to draw the general's gaze back to her, she promises to give everything she has to kill us. But she is no match. Livia weeps as she bleeds out on the ground, heartbroken that she's lost everything, a victim of her own envy. Cid sees her lying motionless on the floor and prays for her soul. She just learned what he understood long ago. Gaius's ambitions are his obsession. The Praetorium can't be reached on foot, so Biggs and Wedge fly us to the installation. We run point, and Cid follows behind as we fight our way to the bottom of the complex, where the Ultima weapon is likely housed. We take a teleporter to the command center where we find Gaius. It's the first time he and Cid have been in a room together since the Calamity. The general tells Cid that his father, Midas, had a secret. He wanted to quit Project Meteor. Cid blames Gaius for working his father to death, but the general asked him to be reasonable. His father was compelled. As he reached out to Dalamud, Bahamut reached back. But before he was fully tempered, he confided in Gaius that although Cid was good at making weapons, he knew his son would be happier using his knowledge for peace. And when he realized this about Cid, he realized he was the same. But by then, the enthrallment began, and it was too late. The general asked Cid to replace Ratatan as his second in command, but Cid refuses, so Gaius calls a Magitech Colossus and retreats to a lower level. We destroy the armor, and Cid activates another terminal and opens another teleporter. He opts to stay behind to steal intel, and we pursue the general. We arrive in the Magitech armor bay and find our modified Magitech Reaper, making the push forward easier. But on the other side of the bay, we have no choice but to overload the Reaper's core to breach a blast door. Nero waits on the other side. Cid calls to check on us, but before we can respond, the Garlean intercepts the transmission, calling Cid old friend. Although Nero is now the highest ranking commander in the Imperial Army, he's still obsessed with the self-perceived competition with Cid. He was more talented, while Cid was admired. Since Cid fled, the Garleans began to think of him more fondly over time. His reputation transformed from prodigy to legend, but never a traitor. No matter how much Nero excelled, he never had a chance to ever be seen as an equal, because all of his achievements were dwarfed by the shadow of Cid's legend. Even not long ago, he heard Gaius himself offer Cid the second in command. After years of faithfully serving, he got the new position by default, but he will earn his respect today. Nero turns his attention back to us and calls for his new weapon. Defeating us is his last chance to prove his value to everyone, but his dreams are dashed and he passively yields. Injured, he lowers his weapon, takes a knee, and simply accepts his defeat. Then promptly escapes talking crap like a Cid reports of a massive power surge in the deepest chamber of the Praetorium and presumes Ultima weapon has been activated. The blockade of Castrum Sentry is now complete, ensuring no further interruptions, so we ride an elevator down to the bottom. Gaius appears behind us, but instead of fighting, he tries to reason with us one last time. He tells us that the 12, the gods of men such as Raugr, Halon, and Nadthal, are no different from Ifrit, Titan, and Garuda. They're all primals. The beast tribes summon their gods regularly, but the men of Eorzea do not, but they could. They don't because they know their false gods are just as imperfect as the beastmen's, and even the most educated. The Eorzeans that understand this truth, people like Louis Soir, people like us, are too weak to do otherwise and too weak to own our own destiny. He believes the very concept of primals goes against our nature. Our nature is conflict. Strength gained through conflict is how man dictates the fate of the weak. And he is a man of conviction and strength, and our death by his hands will prove his point. This is the longest elevator ride. Could not imagine having to do this daily. We fight the general to a stalemate as the elevator reaches the bottom and he retreats to the Ultima weapon. Gaius uses the primals like armaments, deploying them to attack independently of the weapon. One by one, the primals use their ultimate attacks, but Hydaelyn protects us. The primals are ejected from the weapon, drained of ether, and fade away. Ultima weapon returns to his basic form, leaving Gaius bewildered. La Habrea teleports into the room and gloats that everything went exactly as he planned. He reveals that the Ultima weapon's core is the heart of Sabik, a device older than the Alligans and one that contains a forgotten spell. He explains that as the weapon absorbed primals, the heart was revived, and now Ultima Weapon has access to the spell. La Habrea commands the weapon to unleash Ultima. Hydaelyn shields us from the colossal explosion of light. The Praetorium is gone. Everyone is gone. We were deep below the surface, and now we can clearly see the night sky. Gaius is devastated. But La Habrea mocks Hydaelyn. He brags that he forced her to use the last of her strength to protect us and the crystals. Now we're truly alone. The general can't help himself but turn his attention back to us, instead of focusing on what the Ascian just did to his stronghold and his people. We defeat the Ultima weapon and prove the general's ideology wrong, but he still refuses to give in. He tries appealing to logic one more time. He says that if the subjects of a ruler need to look to a higher power, then that ruler isn't wanting. They don't have subjects, they have the misguided, and the misguided only elevate weak leaders. He knows we understand what he's saying. He knows we know what he's saying is true. But we say nothing, and he slumps to the ground. La Habrea teleports over Gaius' body, ridiculing the general for his hubris. The Ascian professes that the imbalance afflicting the planet is Hydaelyn's fault, and declares that she must be eliminated for the planet to finally heal. But to do that, La Habrea needs chaos to converge on a massive proportion to serve as a beacon, and with it, the Ascians will resurrect their one true god. But we just kept killing the primals and getting in the way. That's why he took out the Scions. But then he thought about it. We already had 4 crystals. Why not let us gather the rest, then wait for us to bring him the crystals? And now we're here, with the crystals, separated from our allies, and Hydaelyn is too weak to defend herself. We've brought him everything he needs to destroy the light. We aren't Hydaelyn's warrior of light, we're his bringer of light. La Habrea attacks with a flurry of various magics we've never seen before, but we just keep swinging our axe and he keeps getting hit. We don't want to hurt Thancred, but the Ascian isn't giving us any choice. Fed up, the Ascian pulls his trump card. He restrains us and charges an incredibly powerful spell. We break from the restraints and... Is that Hydaelyn? La Habrea is suddenly gone, but we feel great. The Ascian reappears and damns Hydaelyn for her interference. Hold on, did we just die? Light bursts from our every pore and we lay into the Ascian. He tempers our enthusiasm by reminding us that we'll kill Thancred if we continue. Hydaelyn tells us to ignore him and reminds us that the light will expel the darkness. Suddenly, we're back in the dark place, where this adventure started. It's exactly as before, but we can now see that the Ascian that blocked our path is La Habrea. The sigil illuminates beneath our feet and the blade of light manifests in our hands. La Habrea rushes, but we hit him with a wave of energy. Its brilliant bright light shoots from Thancred's body, and the Ascian is evicted. Hydaelyn reveals her crystal in all its majesty to La Habrea before we land the coup de grace. Nothing is left of the Ascian. The crystal of darkness that ensnares Thancred's body breaks, and suddenly we're back, trapped in a ring of fire. Our Reaper friend leaps to our rescue, and we ride out of the Praetorium with Thancred in tow. The complex begins to crumble and explode as Gaius gets back to his feet, but he's soon welcomed by the heat of the blast around him. As the explosions chase us down the tunnel, Hydaelyn calls on us again. She warns that La Habrea has merely fled to wait for another opportunity. As long as he exists, Eorzea will only ever experience short bouts of peace. But we are destined to carry our small light to those in need, and it will grow to become a beacon of hope for the entire world. We are the bringer of light. Outside the complex, our allies anxiously pray for our return. Hydaelyn answers Menphelia as we turn the corner and race for the exit. Right before we're engulfed in flames, the Reaper leaps out of the tunnel as fire erupts behind us. With the Garlean threat neutralized in Eorzea, the Alliance regroups in Silver Lake, where the Agrius and Midgard Swarmer fought to a draw 15 years ago. Alphino worries about the future, but for now he'll savor this peace. Roban, Merwib, and Kanesena congratulate the Alliance for their bravery and service to all of their nations. They wish to make this alliance strong, so from this point on, all 3 Cran companies will unite. In the past 5 years since the Battle of Cartano, the city-states have isolated themselves, dwelling on the past, but no longer. They will honor those that gave their lives in the past by living for the future, the united future the warriors of light sacrificed themselves for. The the Seventh Astral Era. As everyone celebrates, we become lightheaded and our friends fade away before our eyes. We're snatched back into the dark place. Numerous crystals of darkness present themselves to us as they surround the massive crystal of darkness, the crystal of the Ascians' one true god. Menphelia notices us in distress and pulls us out. Before we can explain, the roar of another primal ends the festivities. Meanwhile, La Habrea is joined by Pasharat, Eorzea, and Nabrales. They plan to continue summoning the primals because this is a war of attrition and they are immortal. Over a dozen Ascians reveal themselves behind La Habrea as he calls for the reckoning and the return of Zodiark. So yeah, you made it to the end of the video and thank you for watching. There should be something popping up right about now that'll take you to the next part of Final Fantasy XIV Story Explained, or maybe even a different story explained. But before you click on a video, please hit that like button. I'm Late to the Gamer, and thank you for letting me tell you a story.